Welcome back to the TFT EU Qualifier. My name is TJ, and you are watching potentially the closest series I think I've ever seen of TFT, especially after that last game. We are, of course, presented by
KitKat.
Thank you, Matt. We set that up, but I really thought it would go better. And we do have a very exciting Game 5 headed your way. I'm joined by both Matt Nabirical and Daniel, and long-time TFT analyst Witter. Witter, you didn't shout KitKat, and given that Matt's was so disappointing, I will edge that slightly up in favorability and head to you first. Double off of that last game had a really, really incredible pivot in the mid-game. We were talking about it on the desk in between. He started kind of really strong. That initial streak got cancelled, and he pulls out this A-Soul Protector's pivot. Can you talk a little bit about that?
So what you're seeing right there is what is commonly referred to as the P.V.A. composition. Very often you will see in the early game being paired up with just bards to really push levels and stuff like that. But in this game specifically, he just played for a more assured off early game. Then you obviously just had a lot of excess HP to work with, so he wasn't as pressured in his transition times during the mid and late game. And obviously, 2-star Protector early on Sol is just such a menace. It really just does tear apart like pretty much the entire lobby, unless you run into like a really strong and dark stuff, for example, right? We saw coming out from Volta in that game. And again, it's a comp that this type of playstyle really lies like quite natural to Double in what we've seen him in the past. He's played a lot of P.V.A. during the qualifiers, but a lot of Astro Snipers, compositions that have a pretty high late game ceiling overall. And I think it's kind of starting to shine throughout the entire tournament so far that it's just something that functions really well if you can get through your transitions.
The other players, of course, eligible for a win are Volt and Lev. And I want to talk to you, Matt, about Lev, mostly because Witter will be hard biased. He's got to support his countrymen. So we've seen a very, very strong performance throughout the tournament from him. That last game, he pulled out the big vein with the Aurelia, looked like a strong start. Didn't quite get him all the way. What went wrong? Are you worried? Does he need to change his plans in order to come out with the first place that is necessary for him to win?
So to me, it feels like the problem for Lev thus far this tournament has been that he gets these fantastic early starts, but has trouble transitioning them into the mid and late game. He'll go for fantastic HP early on, or in the last game, terrible HP, and then not be able to transition into the late game. So I want to see just more consistent starts from him, more consistent HP reserve, and then transitions into the late game. Just more consistency, you'll get that win.
I do believe we have the game, so I'm going to go ahead and throw us towards it. You guys have a great time here in 5. Before we go, I want to bounce to you, Witter, one more time. Volt has done an incredibly good job throughout this tournament. He's been streaking the last 3. Is there anything that can stop him?
Lefty Trotsky.
All right, we'll head in Game 5 here in the EU qualifiers. Keep watching. It's all going to end right now.
All right, so first carousel off right now. We see a lot of people prioritizing those rods and the belts. And again, no Negatron Cloak. I think that average placement with the start of a Negatron Cloak is about 8th. So most definitely going to be one of the worst starts in the game. But again, everyone here did not get shafted early game, and we are going to be going over to Super Dense, a Galaxy that's going to highlight people that will look to really aggressively roll early on, because you don't have to level to add in the excess synergies, which is going to mean we're going to be seeing a lot more of an aggressive game right here.
One of the things I was surprised about by that carousel start, though, Solo Gasong, for the first time, we have seen not go for a belt or a chain vest. Those are his big 2 item starts, and this time did not go for it. So, be interested to see where he's headed with this game.
And again, just for the final time, the 3 players that you will have to look out for this game is going to be Lefty Trotsky, Double 61, and Voltarix. These are going to be the players that you're going to be looking out for, because those are the people that can take home the victory and win the tournament.
The goal of everyone else is to make sure none of those 3 actually win, because if one of them wins, the other 2 make it through as well, essentially. With the way the point spread is so far, it is very hard to dethrone them without a concerted effort. So I assume everyone else is thinking the exact same thing. So I want to see some really aggressive play from the other players to try and focus on shutting down those three mainstays.
Most definitely. So let's a quick overlook here. So like compositions that I look for on this Galaxy would tend to be Shredder. I like to play this a lot in this Galaxy. Not necessarily Yi 6BM, because Yi 6BM doesn't necessarily want to have that extra unit. Like, obviously they will, but it's not at the core. Like, they'll obviously be looking for a trade sector to more effective reroll. But the thing is that about the Shredder composition, at least the old school one, really requires a lot of fringe synergy to come in. Also, cybernetics, they do go up a little bit in stock. It's not quite like on other Galaxies, but having the free item to slam on, and as well also just be able to hit your power spikes one level sooner, is really going to help that comp for sure as well, because again, it's a composition where you have a lot of fringe synergies in there, like the you want to go for Sniper, Blade Master, or Blaster, for example, right, which you'll be able to do at level 7 instead of level 8.
So we will be looking for the cybernetics. We will be looking for that Shredder composition from the starts of these players. No item's going to be slammed just yet. Not as exciting an early game as on Salvage World. That was a whole lot of fun seeing everyone being like, the Hand of Justice, sure. Ludens, why not? On this one, I doubt we'll see anyone opt into Ludens. Voltariix, though.
Very early commit here on the Hextech Gunblade, which is very interesting to me because Hextech Gunblade as an item is not incredibly well utilized by a lot of champions in the general scope of the game. I would say that it's not suboptimal, like it's not perfect on mech, but it's not horrible on mech. Then there's Jace frontline, which really likes that. And then there will also just be the Aurelion Sol late game already, like where that item really just starts to shine, especially given the fact that it now has a shield with the most recent changes, because obviously if that wasn't added to it, it would just be a worse Hand of Justice in a lot of situations, which I think, again, is something that's worth looking out for. And a Giant Slayer Slam coming out from Tanpop already right now will highlight a very different approach to the game that we've seen from right now. This is not a mech game, I would assume, because Giant Slayer Slam this early on is not what you're looking for when you're playing mech.
So in regards to Voltariix's opener, do you think he's just going for a super hyper aggressive saying, I'm only going to go for this composition because in the later stages of the game, it is the strongest. I want an Aurelion Sol eventually. I'm going to slam the Gunblade, slam all the items I want, because there's only one composition, one set of units that I want to utilize.
It's an interesting take on it for sure. One thing that's worth noting is that Gunblade can, just go on Jace for a while, and Jace can go into pretty much every comp as a frontline option for quite a good while. I think it's too early to call whether or not it's going to be like a P.V.A. comp again. Obviously, you can have a very clear goal in mind. That's what you want to go for. But if you get too focused in on that, I think that it's just going to end up being a rough one for you 100% of the time.
Okay, so we'll hope for a little bit more flexibility coming out of him. Not expecting the full force just yet. Meanwhile, we do see a Shiv Slam. So someone's going Battlecast, I suspect. Not really a usable item in many other compositions in its current state, despite the buffs it has received recently.
It's actually an alright slam item in Cybers to a certain extent, because it will help you get rid of a lot of protective front lines a little bit more effectively. But again, it's not a priority item because of the components. It's kind of like old school Shroud in back in the day, where Shroud as an item was still incredibly good. But it wasn't an item that you would slam or you would make very often, because both Glove and Chain Vest were the true premier items in the game at the time. Very much still is, but it's a little bit different now with the changes being made to it, and just the overall pace of the game in such 3.5.
Double as well was going for that very strong Space Pirates opener, looking for a way to get into the later stages of the game. So I want to follow them as we go forward and see if they're playing as late game oriented as I'm suspecting, because at this point they just need to get first, and if they don't get first, everyone is behind enough that a first place finish from anyone else does not knock out either of or any of those three, with the exception
of
if Sweller Tiger gets it and Lev if Dasik gets first and Lev gets 8th. That is the only situation in which those 3 can be knocked out.
First or eighth, we were talking about it, that there probably would be the name of the game at this point. Again, a very aggressive item time coming out of Volta again here with the Giant Slayer. Is it just, this is actually interesting because I'm not really sure where these items are going to go, because if this was going to be a mech, right, you wouldn't itemize the Rumble. This was something that I'm going to, hands down, I'm not really sure about, how this is going, because those are some pretty specific item slams that aren't super flexible. Giant Slayer, fantastically flexible, as I hit my mic, excuse me. But the Hextech Gunblade, not super flexible.
No, it is giving him a lot of early power, though, and maybe that's what he's just looking for. If you slam these items, figure out what they go on later, but in the meantime, you just keep your health up, you're almost guaranteed a top 4, and again, Voltarix either wants first or doesn't really care. That's the level of ahead he is. So I'm actually really interested in this as a tournament strat, adapting to the format and saying, really it doesn't matter what I do if I don't get first at this stage. Next round, he has to worry a little bit more. But for this round, if he doesn't get first, it doesn't really matter where in that 2nd to 8th he places. So I really think it's a super interesting strategy, and I want to see how it works out for him.
Yeah, the dynamic is definitely unheard of in a lot of situations, right? Because in a lot of other tournaments, it's just been set amount of games or set amount of points, and then it's done. But it hasn't really looked this way for quite a while, and I think it's quite interesting to see where that's going to end up and how it's going to impact this game just moving along, because right now Double as well as Lev are not really looking in strong positions, while Volta right now is just almost streaking throughout the entire game.
Maybe interrupted here by that Fiora. Good stun from her. Voltarix just buying out, knowing he won't be able to make Econ. Unfortunate loss going into PvE because you don't get your win streak bonus. Do you think he's going Rebel Jinx?
So that could be an interesting one to point out, right? Because again, if you're really aiming for that already on Sol, Gunblade Slam makes a lot of sense. But again, it's not a way that I would play out the early game per se, because I would obviously prioritize getting either using that belt for the sword for a GA for the Gangplank, or another item for the Jinx. And again, right now, there's no belt, there's no vest, and you need at least 2 vests, and you would like to see at least 1 belt to really have proper Rebels itemization. So let's see where this actually ends up going at, because it's actually a pretty weird one. And now we're hitting 3-1. Obviously, this is the big power spike, because the people on lose streaks right now will just get an extra, everyone will just get an extra unit in here, and that can make sure that people can stabilize. But it could also mean that the people that are lose streaking right now, like Lev in last place and solo, they're just going to take even harder losses. We can see Lev going to level 5 here just to ensure he doesn't fall too far behind on board.
Yeah, he really wants to power up there. Meanwhile, Voltarix, with an interesting start, will just toss in that Rebel. I'm just so thrilled by watching this. This is such a unique strategy coming in. Tampop as well. Everyone is just slamming items like crazy. What is this even transitioning into here for Tampop?
Is this Reddit comp? I think this might be Reddit comp. I'm not even lying. 30 gold, Zoe, TF, Caitlyn. No, never mind. It's not Reddit comp. I'm lying. This could probably just be a Dark Star transition, not gonna lie. It looks like it could end up there from the items, but again, it's kind of hard to see the full assessment. I thought there was a Caitlyn on the opposite side, which is why I thought it was going to be the quote-unquote Reddit comp, but it wasn't, so it's alright for now. Finds an early Soraka here, and Soraka as a unit is probably the strongest Mystic in the game, which is kind of weird to say, but the way that Soraka actually took a nerf recently, just due to the power level of her, to be completely honest, and I find that super interesting that a lot of people just slander Soraka, and if they find it like that, even at the cost of econ.
Meanwhile, Magarki on a 100% win streak with a static Shiv Caitlyn. Not exactly how I'd suspect you get to that point, but well done by him, and Double running into it with that Cybers composition. And Aurelia doing a whole lot of work, may be able to shut down this win streak as Graves gets the blind onto 2. double will shut it down.
So we see Lev now taking a win here. This might be where he starts turning it around, right? Because he's won 2 in a row now, I do believe, and he's finding a few upgrades here, though. But again, the perspective of Dasik right here has that. This one I will call is going to be a Jinx, a Rebels game, because looking at it right here, you can see that has 2-star set, 2-star match a year already, so he's not going to be looking for those units in the later stage of the game. Has Rune's Hurricane and Red Buff, which are my go-to items on Jinx. Generally speaking, I love the Rune's Hurricane a lot more than a lot of other people tend to do. But it's just, I think this is definitely a start that's going to be going towards that.
So Volturius may be looking to pivot out from whatever his composition is trying to do right now. That Yi doing quite a bit of work with those Thieves' Gloves. A pretty strong slammable item here. We'll shut down Volturius a little bit there as Dasik ends up with a win streak of his own now. Only one streaking enough to grab those flames. Now he will be last pick on the carousel. And poor Solo Gasong, not having a great tournament. Last place in health once again.
We got so close. We got so close to dodging the full item carousel, but here it comes. And this is where I can really start helping out a lot of the people that have been struggling, because they get first priority on a completed item. And Lev going for that rapid fire cannon Ravasauri is a pretty clear sign that he wanted to go for like something that is going to really utilize that, because you look at the items, like there's some Nomicon that went untouched for like 2 circles. There's the QSS for a mech player. There are so many good items in this carousel that I think that pretty much everyone can be kind of content with what they got.
Dasik even going for the Swordbreaker, which I find is like a pretty underrated item nowadays. It's so strong, especially into Six Blade Master Yi. I played a game where a Shaco ran it and absolutely just destroyed me because my Yi did not get to auto attack. Now with
I
that
think that disarm. So the issue for Dasik right there was that the leftover item was Luden's Echo, which I actually quite rate, to be honest, over the disarm right here. But because I just like Luden's Echo as a slam onto a 6, but he's not running 6 right now, so it's not really going to be like that effective. And also, Swordbreaker did take a buff on this patch, right? It did get a buff. It's now 33% up from 25, and that is a significant amount of extra percentage.
Yeah, it's enough to slow down the fight and give you a lot more time, and especially when you're running something like Blasters that needs to get time to get off the ground for your Jinx to get resets, having someone with a Swordbreaker to slow down the pace of those fights for your opponent, it's pretty strong. Warm
and again, I mean, it helps, right? Because that's 2 bells. That's going to be a lot of healing coming out of the Yi ability, because I do believe that it scales off of his maximum HP, right? And that's a lot of HP. That's like, what, 1,200 extra HP or something ridiculous like that? That's a lot.
Yeah, that's a beefy lad.
So one thing that I'd like to point out right now for the perspective of Dasik is that he is a little bit behind of the curve that I would like to be at in terms of leveling right now. But if he wins this round, he should be right up in time. And look at Solo. This is a pretty strong like sword protector something start going. But no blue buff on the Syndra 2 is really going to hamper him.
Not being threatened, though, in the back line is that Zed focusing onto the Soraka finally will take her down. Now, Syndra being threatened ever so slowly. The Warmox actually saved Yi's life, so maybe worth a little bit more than I had thought. Solo Gasong takes that loss as Dasik continues that win streak into the PvE round.
Yeah, but I think that it's going to be very important for us to stay on Solo right now, just due to the nature of that. He's going to be going in for something pretty big here on 4-1, I would assume. Just simply due to the fact that this game right here is it's balancing on a knife's edge for him, to be completely honest. This is not where you want to be at. As we go over to a different perspective, Lev, who is win streaking now, has found that Dark Star setup here quite early on, so it's not fully scaled in. But as long as the rest of the lobby doesn't fully scale in for now, he should be in a pretty decent spot, all things considered.
There's the Bloodthirster as well.
That's perfect. Perfect Shaco items is really big for him. Just see if it goes for a roll down here, because due to the nature of having that, having the Force of Nature, rather, sorry, it's becoming a lot easier for people to go for these 7-1 rolldowns instead, because now they have the extra space to really start showing off their synergies. You can see them rolling a lot more aggressively in terms of how what they need to hit here. And the thing is that if you're not relying on those 5 costs to really stabilize yourself, like we see right now, Lev is not really prioritizing getting the Seraphim, so he's not really going to be rolling for it. I think that we're going to be seeing a lot more people have hit quite hard right now, even though I wouldn't expect to see a lot of people roll to 0 like Lev just did.
Roll down did find a Shaco. We'll give him plenty of power going into this, but that Kog'Maw, if it can get the blind onto Shaco, should shut this down pretty easily. Shaco popped into the GA. Auto attacks going in. He gets disarmed. Lev will be taken down by Deisic, who is still continuing that massive win streak.
And this is the Deisic we expected to see coming into this day, right? This is the Deisic that we expected to see come into game to what is technically day 4 into the finals. Finally finding a stride, finding those early game openers here, going on to a little bit of a well-known classic of the Rebels. As Shaco 2 coming in here is going to be an absolutely massive find for Lev as well, just really showing off the power level as well. And he has to give up some of the key units he has to, like, he ever been holding, like he's having to give up the Mordekaiser, which most likely will mean that we'll be seeing him go for a more protector-based front line, which he's already going for right now.
We'll be able to find that. The Shaco going off in the back line. Not able to find the Vayne just yet, but GA still available. No healing reduction onto the Shaco, so should be able to keep going in terms of that damage, but 1v5, a little bit rough for him. RFC
Absolutely
though,
not. Absolutely not. No. So the thing is that about RFC Shaco is that he doesn't miss, right? So the Shen wasn't able to slow him down. And again, with no red buff in play there for the cybernetic player, I kind of missed what was. I think it might have been double. It's going to be quite hard to really like hit things. We are going to be going on to a 4-3 roll down here, the classic one. Swella Tiger now being the culprit of the roll down. And again, has an RFC slammed onto the Victor, which will ensure that Victor stays cornered and can then obviously will hitting targets further away. Because of how the abilities work in the game, there's no necessarily a max range for an ability like Victor's. It just goes like from his attack range.
Mm-hmm. Now the pull in, Victor hopefully able to get an ultimate off for Sveller's sake. Magarki still has a rather strong board, but that Ashe sitting on just the static Shiv won't be able to do a ton of damage just yet. Victor continues free firing. We'll take down Magarki. Sveller continues on with that very strong board state, holding on 35 HP.
Oh, that's some interesting things. Like the Gangplank right here, with so many mech players in the game, is going to be the most consistent one in the carousel. And Rod Gangplank is absolutely huge, and Tanpop just runs away with it right here. And this could be the turnaround point for him. We see a recurve bow being taken away here. Now Swella is looking at what he's going to be picking up here. Picks up the Jinx with that vest, and that's going to be a big one as well. Lev going for another vest. And we'll see, we're going to start seeing like the item tier list, right? Even this far into the game, it still very often goes anything but Negatron Cloak.
Deisic has to be stuck with at least one Negatron Cloak. Guess it can make a D-Claw at the very least. But even that's a little underwhelming at this point.
Yeah, and the thing is that Rebels can utilize 1 to 2 quite easily. When you get that third one, it's kind of just a rough one, because you want to make Ionic Spark for your Gangplank in the late game if that's the pivot you end up going for. That is, but having 2 of them can be like a little bit interesting, because if he doesn't pick up another belt, then, I mean, if he picks up a belt, he can make a Suffer. And if he picks up another rod, he can make an Ionic Spark, and then he's utilized 3 Negatron Cloaks this game. But it's not where I want to be at right now. I do really wanted to see something like a vest to start like building up that GA, etc. So it's definitely not the most optimal position for Deisic right now, but as long as he keeps streaking it, I think he's going to be pretty fine. He just doesn't.
Unfortunately. Yeah, there goes that streak. Down to double as well. Sitting up there at second place in the health bars, and Deisic, problem now I see is that he's stuck with the Swordbreaker on Jinx. I would have expected him to transfer that onto the other blaster, try and hope for a more offensive item on the Jinx, but instead he just put it on her, and you're losing a lot of damage potential with that.
I did see that. I do believe we saw someone is on that Master Yi carry though. We're pretty close to perfect items. That's going to be pretty interesting to follow how that is going to unfold for the rest of the game. So you see it, just doing your due diligence, just scouting the lobby is going to be great. When you have downtime, always do this in your games. It's going to help you dramatically in terms of just trying to figure out where you are going with your comp, for sure most of the time. And how to say, Jinx being exposed here is not going to be the name of the game, but he does end up facing his positioning in last thing, which swaps directly into a mech, and this is going to be a rough one most likely.
Yeah, it's a really big mech, plus the Ergot as well. We'll be able to pull in the Riven, but Jinx has popped off.
That I didn't look at how weak the mech actually was for Svella, and with no like real tank items being built onto it, the Jinx will somewhat be able to just tear that mech apart, and the rest of the backline is not very strong, and just like that, you just see the Jinx just starting to pop off. And this is where, like 4-7 right now, this is where you need to completely shut off your comp, because if you don't get what damage you need right now, you need to stop you need to start playing a little bit more aggressive with your economy potentially, just to try to ensure you finish as high up the leaderboard as possible.
Our 3 highlighted players right now for the update: Basic in first, Double sitting there very happily in second, Lev in fourth, and Voltariax in fifth. So our 3 players that are on the cusp of victory, doing pretty well.
All right, now there's a lot of decisions to make as he finds another Negatron cloak. It's going to be going for the GA rather than going for a potential Rebel spat. It's just going to be making, I mean, it's not optimal to look at it, is it? Like, that's a Celestial spat for now. Obviously, could be something else should he go long enough into the game to get to the second carousel, like the post-Kane one, or the second one after that. I do believe it's the one that will start having components in. As he does find the GP in time to make transition and jam the items up. This is going to be a really big spike for Dasik as well right now, because this is going to be an absolutely critical point to see if Volta is on that G, that first array. Wait, mech? Okay.
Okay. Interesting. An interesting competition from Voltariax. The Yi popping off as best it can. This mech is actually a little bit terrifying, which I definitely did not expect, but the sword breaker is doing so much work. Shuts down the mech entirely, and there goes Voltariax, left at 15 HP.
That fight was such a sword breaker diff as well. Like the Yi getting stunned up in the back line, and that was actually like such a big sword breaker diff.
What a wild round. Actually terrifying. Now Solo Gasang sitting on 6 Star Guardian, 4 Sorcerers, and not having HP. Too hot of a game. Yeah, 2 HP.
Like, I mean, generally speaking, you like to have 2 of something because it means you have a good splash synergy, but 2 HP is not a splash synergy, and I think that's going to be a pretty rough one coming out here from the German player, not going to lie. Again, had to go for that roll down to stabilize the game here, but swaps into the Yi to a certain extent. This might be a rough one, but the items on the Syndra are pretty good and should keep the entire team just rolling with mana, and I think there's going to be a win coming out on Volta. Might be the first one to go out here, to be completely honest.
It may be enough damage to take him out now that Nico's alive, yeah. Oh my god, 1 HP.
But look at the lobby, man. look at his 10, 9, Swiller 8. So okay, Volta ended up dying there. Volta dying. He's out after running for at least winning the entire lobby and winning the tournament. But look at Double, 61. Like both Double and Lev are win streaking right now.
Yep. Basic, the last one to be able to challenge them, really. That's who you want to be watching. If you're hoping for this to go to a game 6 like we are, be watching on Basic. Hope he does well, because everyone else, incredibly low HP, doesn't really have a great shot. Double Swordbreaker. All right.
That's an interesting role coming out of that Thieves Glove, for sure.
I don't think it'll do a whole lot, though. That is a spooky Syndra. Ton of damage there. We'll be able to get that Jinx down. GA, not going to be enough for you, Gangplank. Solo Gasang hangs on by a thread.
And that's Lev. Just wins for 10. Oh, still alive. Solo and Tan are still
Barely.
alive. And here we go. First completed item carousel.
Sologasang going for the Morellonomicon makes a lot of sense. Tampop, what are you feeling today?
Ionic Spark for the
All right.
most likely was probably was most likely looking for a more defensive option for the mech, but again, Ionic Spark has also been considered key on mech. And the thing about mech is that you can play pretty much any item on it, right? Because we've been seeing like the OCE mechs with the Blood versus and the IEs of the world coming out to play at times. But again, it's not looking too bad here for Tampop. He has the GP2, but the most important thing for him right now is the fact he doesn't have a GA. And with no GA, it's even with the GP2, it can be quite hard guaranteeing the cast, as he does find the Victor 2, however, but have to give up either Fizz 2 or the potential of Soraka 2. Is he gonna risk it for the biscuit and lock the shop here?
No. All right, he's gonna buy it. Oh, that was terrifying. Double Soraka, trying to keep this Victor up as long as possible, but he's running into Sologasang. That massive Syndra. There goes the G ultimate, lands onto the Syndra. Goodbye, Sologasang, just as the Nico left to keep himself alive, and she's not going to be long for this world. GA pops. So does Sologasang.
Sologasang is down and out here, and Lev is just... The Shaco 2 is such a big carry unit when there is no anti-healing, because look at this. Obviously, that was during the Earth time, but still, Shaco 2 as a unit is just incredibly hard to kill because he's so hard to lock down due to how he drops aggro when he ultis, and especially with the RFC, it just becomes incredibly hard to really catch the Shaco because he just jumps around the block more or less, right? Like just goes for a walk every time, and you just don't know where he is until he pops out and kills you again.
Worth noting from this position that theoretically, Voltarix, now that he's finished 8th, can be knocked out of the top 3 and miss Worlds.
That would be rough for him.
Place. That'll be the loss.
So we just see a mashup of GP ultimates coming out, but it is going to be Tampop's GP2 that's going to be the victor in this one. But again, it's not really critical for Dasik, because he's not. This is like a ghost board battle rather than like a proper battle. So Dasik is not taking anything from this. Oh, double! I have seen this one before. I have seen this one before from double. He's strong and everything is all right. It's come around to stage 6, he just starts bleeding out. And
yeah,
you know what? For W, this is not a deja vu you want, right? Like this is a bad deja vu.
Incredibly. Oh, the Magarki with that RFC would be fantastic for his Jhin. Keep himself in it.
Yeah, but
sitting rather low on points at the moment.
Yeah, but like it sounds weird saying that RFC would be good for Jhin, right? Because it's like, well, Jhin, has infinite range, but it's more about the fact that it can be dodged. That is the most important one, because you're guaranteeing those 4th shots are going to connect every time. We see a very nice level 9 coming out here from Dasik as well here, and this is just like a comp that will start slow. Like this is like where you'll see the flexibility late game of the Rebels, right? Because you have the Chrono Blade Master in, and you also have the Blaster, but you don't have, like, let's say, your Brawler, you don't have your Blitzcrank in here that a lot of people consider key. And with that, Celestial Spat is now able to slam in that Lulu as well, just trying to deal with some of those backline threats. This is absolutely insane, but this is the oldest trick in the book. The Zephyr Blitzcrank is going to come in hot.
Won't be able to find anything just yet. There goes the GP ultimate. That Yi still popping off, and Jinx is safe in the backline. She's been able to get those rockets rolling. Magarki in a whole lot of trouble. And
he's out.
He's out of here.
So the stakes in our top 4 right now are, incredibly big.
This is terrifying, because if Dasik wins, he can make his way.
If Dasik wins, it's game 6, Like, if game 6 comes around, we just keep it going, and that's going to be an absolutely immense one coming through.
That'd be 4 people fighting for first place, all of whom would end the tournament right there if they win. Tampop versus Dasik. Mech versus GP. I suspect this GP is going to get a massive ultimate out. There it goes. There's the pop. Not quite enough damage. Jinx has herself transformed. There go the rockets. And there goes Tanpop taking that 4th place.
This fight is important. Double versus Lev. This could potentially be for the tournament win as well in the future. And this is going to be a good indication about how this matchup is going to go leading forward, right? And unless Dasik is at the point where he's the strongest player in the lobby, which very well might be the case because Rebels at the late game stage is an incredibly potent comp. Issue being that Swordbreaker on the Jinx, not it. Like, that is not an item that you're looking for on Jinx in general. You're looking for a Giant Slayer, you're looking for a Deathblade, you're looking for pretty much anything that would add more damage, not just be extra CC, because in the composition you'll have the CC with that incredibly strong gangplank coming out of the way, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
Oof. This is rough because he positioned for something completely different, right? And just hits into both of the infiltrators.
Yep. Meanwhile, Lev versus Double. Interesting to see where this one goes because it kind of determines who would be the winner of the lobby if not for Dasik. That's a whole lot of damage going down, Shaco. It's like 1v9, man, but Urgot going to be enough.
Yeah, it's not looking too hot for Lev in that 1v1. And it looks like Dasik will be losing the matchup to Lev. So unless Dasik takes the matchup against Double, I think that we will have our victor coming out in this game.
It's all up to 2 things right now: itemization and positioning. Everyone has rolled down all of their gold thus far. So everything is down to who gets the better predictions, who gets the better positioning. It's all up to this, the tournament on the line this next round.
Look at that. The Death Cap coming through for the Aurelion Sol most likely is going to add a nice little bit of extra damage here. Unfortunately for Dasik, he's unable to go for the Aurelion Sol 2 right now. This is actually a pretty interesting one. He's going to forego having in that Celestial bonus just to get that Aurelion Sol 2. Values the extra damage coming out from the A-Sol 2, which is an absolutely massive one to have 100% of the time. I would definitely agree with what he's doing right now. But he won't have that extra healing coming out. So he really needs to just make sure these fights don't go too long here.
He may be able to take out Lev here with that additional A-Sol damage, but the Shaco, there's nothing stopping him from healing at the moment because the Jinx has not been able to get a single auto off. The Shaco is absolutely massive. Dasik barely holds on by a thread. 1 HP left on every single player in the lobby. This next round decides if we go to a game number 6.
Oh, but the 2 strikes could be so huge if he can finance it in some way regard, and it doesn't look like he's going to be able to do that, which is going to be pretty unfortunate for him because that is pretty big. And the issue right now for Dasik, when something that will happen when you are in these late game situations with Rebels, is that you are going to be having to do a lot of these fake, as you can see right now. And it's going to end up with this Jinx being caught in the middle of nowhere, which actually might be the idea right now. This looks really, really weird. But the Jinx is safe and sound away from those infiltrators. Obviously going to hurt her damage quite a lot until she starts popping. But it might be the way for him to win this fight.
Double looking pretty good so far. That Jinx has been taken down. Here comes the Echo ultimate again. Stops it. Dasik's out. Means that this will be the final round of the tournament. Who's going to take it home? Will it be Lev? Will it be Double?
Oh, this is critical, right? Because now look at this Hextech Gunblade coming out for Lev. Not really the item you're looking for too hard. It can be a pretty decent option on something like the Nico in the front line, obviously just being able to like try to sustain a little bit longer, but Double as well. It's just super, super strong right now.
Both of them in incredible board states. This is the finals. All comes down to positioning for the very last round coming up. A little bit of gold to work with here for Lev if he wants to look for something. Gonna roll down. Finds a Janna. Is he going to slam it in?
It's hard. Like he has
Already
one
has
Janna
one.
already, right? So he's looking for the Janna 2, which would definitely be a massive upgrade coming out here. And Janna 2 as a unit in general is pretty good. And I think that adding in the Urgot here would actually be quite clever, because what happens with the Urgot is obviously it's going to be a very nice way of dealing with some of the more problematic units in the game right now, for like the ones that you can't really burst through as the player here. And Gunblade on Urgot is actually pretty interesting. The only issue with the Gunblade on Urgot is that it doesn't, like, the healing doesn't come through until after the unit dies.
Let's take a look if that matters. Coming into the final round of the tournament, Double has a strong board state, but is it strong enough? We need to watch this Shaco to see who's going to win. Shaco has so much damage, so much healing, but it's 1 versus 9. There's no way he's going to make it through. The GA pops, and there goes the Urgot ult to secure the victory. And your grand finals champion, Double 61.
Congratulations to Double. He is your EU top ticket to Galaxies, and I can't wait to see him on the international stage. It was a bit of a rocky road, to be honest, though, Witter. We had that initial strong start, and then things got rough. Things got very dicey. What gave Double the consistency necessary to win out that last game and all of the initial games that got him there?
I mean, again, we just see how strong he is at playing like the late game incredibly well, and it's something that I would like to highlight about his play in general. It's actually something that I kind of started to notice as well when he was popping up in lobbies that I was spectating during the first week of the qualifiers as well. Just his ability to really navigate those late game situations quite well really is what has really separated him from the rest of the pack today.
And it was those pivots that really impressed me. We saw multiple games where, like I said, it got really rough. You were like, oh, I did it that last game as well. I was like, oh, Double's not going to win this one. And then you start not paying attention to the side of the score, and it helps that we didn't have his feed. That also helped us kind of let him slip by to the top. But as you headed towards the late game, you started to see him start streaking and start picking up wins, pivot into a winning late game comp. And Matt, I think that's one of the most impressive attributes a TFT player can have, is that ability to adapt mid-game.
That late game,
Oh, no.
as Widow was mentioning, he has the adaptations in the early, he has the adaptations in the mid, but the biggest thing is knowing where his strengths are in the late game, knowing how to get there healthily, and then figuring out what is my absolute strongest theoretical board. Swapping in units that might lose you some synergies, might gain you other ones, but give you the edge against your specific matchups is the strength of a very, very good TFT player.
Of course, the top 3 was still a little bit up in the air. All 3 of the first 3 places go to the Galaxies event. So let's take a look at the leaderboard. These are the players who've qualified for Galaxies. Obviously, we have the Double, who went all the way. Then we get Lev, and we get Volt. Those 3 players will be your EU finalists going all the way to the Galaxies tournament.
And just to highlight something here, right? Imagine if Daisy had won this game, by the way. Like, everyone in the lobby besides Solgasang would have been able to take a first and go to Worlds, regardless of how many points they had. Imagine the absolute carnage that would have been. But I'm really happy with our top 3. I think that all 3 players today have shown that they're going to have what it takes to really present Europe at the world stage.
I think TFT is terrifying.
There was nobody in chat, apart from the Frenchman, who were not rooting for Lev to take us all the way, or sorry, for Desik to take us all the way, because if he won that one game, we would have had the spiciest Game 6 imaginable. We did get a very strong Game 5, though, despite the win going to Double. I think we need to talk about Lev, because he, correct me if I'm wrong, he never actually won a game, but he was consistently in that top 2-3. What was going on with him, Witter?
And again, this is what I was highlighting again, right? I've been talking this guy up a lot. Like, I'm making him look like the world's best player at this point, right? But again, like when he hits his stride, he is an absolutely incredible player at just ensuring that he is in and around those top 4 spots. And in a game like TFT, like the margins between winning and losing a game in the 1v1 are so tiny, they're so slim that as long as you set yourself up for success in being in and around that breakpoint between like the top four, top threes, etc. of the world, you are going to do incredibly well in a tournament scenario, regardless of how much emphasis is put on it first.
And it was that presence, it was that constant presence that qualified him, even though he never actually got the win. He doesn't get the big tournament title, but he will be able to go to Galaxies. And depending on the format there, he may also be rewarded for this steady playstyle. If we see another format that requires you to finish first, though, I think we're going to need to see more focus on play like the kind that we get from Double, which is incredibly focused on these late game pivots, these strong, powerful late game adjustments that kept winning him games throughout today. Matt, we were talking earlier about regional metas. Do you think Double is the future of EU TFT? Do you think some other regions might be better into this kind of format?
The one thing I worry about for Double going into the international stages of the competition is that the way he was able to win these rounds so far was not off of these aggressive early starts. He was scaling into the later stages of the game. He was adapting his composition as he went, and he felt safe to sort of sacrifice a little bit of his econ to do so, a little bit of his health to do so. The problem I see going into very aggressive regions like Korea, like China, is that they will punish that early game. They will roll and level very aggressively. And if Double isn't prepared to adapt his early game to a more aggressive style, he's going to struggle in that international competition.
We've talked a lot about Double. We even mentioned Lev Witter. I'll give the bounce to you for the Frenchman Vault. What's going on with him out of this tournament? We saw him save the tournament in that game 4. Is he kind of a dark horse headed out in the 3rd place, but still going to Galaxies nonetheless?
So the funny thing is that if I was asking people like and giving me like a straight up tier list with the players for this lobby specifically before going live today, people and out of the 3 people that qualified, they would have Volta first. Like Volteriix would have been the first player on their list out of these 3. Obviously, some people will have different variations of what they believe and who they believe would be the better player. But Volta is probably like the biggest name on a pure name basis here that has made it out of this European qualifier, because he's an absolute machine at the game. Constantly has like account at the top of the lobby, at top of the leaderboards, rather, sorry, on EU West. Constantly it's just an absolute machine of whatever he does with the game. So I think that regardless of what happens here, he's also a really strong favorite coming into the Worlds. Not even a dark horse, just straight up an absolute machine.
Okay, a shining horse headed onto the world stage. Do you feel good, Witter, about the squad overall? We do have 3 representatives here from Europe. How are you feeling about their chances overall?
Overall, again, I said before we went live today, Europe will win Worlds. I'm calling it right now. I mean, at me at the 5th of September if Europe doesn't win Worlds. But I'm calling it right now. I'm not going to call the player because that's going to be really depending on what patch we're going to be playing Worlds on. But 100% of the time, I'm going to call Europe win right now.
There's a fight that can be set up between the Chinese esports Stan and Matt and the EU boy, but we'll save that for a later broadcast. I want to take a step back as we wrap up our broadcast today. What shocked you overall, Matt? What were the new innovative things you saw? I was impressed by the number of mechs. I got a repeat of Pacific Rim in that game 4. What's going on with that? Do you think that's something we'll see on the Galaxy stage as well?
If the patch doesn't change, we're 100% going to see a bunch of mech. The one thing that really surprised me today was how different the games felt compared to the semifinals, because you have players like Solo Gasong, who was able to consistently force a composition, same for Tanpop, Battlecast and Mech respectively, and find lots of success with it, top 2, top 4. But the successful players we saw today were the ones that were able to adjust compositions on the fly, play multiple compositions, and that is a far cry from the semifinals, which shows to me that the finals were infinitely more competitive, which is fantastic. But that makes me worry about some of the less flexible players in other regions as well. But it does excite me for those players like these 3 finalists that made it through, who can play that infinite number of comps almost and adjust them on the fly, because these final games at Worlds are going to be the best TFT we have ever seen. And I absolutely cannot wait.
Witter, I'm going to bounce that to you afterwards. I do believe we have a final top 3 graphic. So let's take a look at that. I want to build our highlight around these 3 players headed out. All 3 of them have that magic of being able to do absolutely anything at any given time. Witter, you've said your money's on Volt. Matt, I'm going to throw to you. Which one of these players are you keeping your eye most on headed to Galaxies?
Based off today's performances, I'm going to be watching the other Frenchman, Double 61, who was able to consistently find those first place finishes where Valtariux faltered a little bit. The difference between the two today in the tournament was that the ceiling for Valtariux was very high, but his floor in terms of placements was less consistent than Double's. He had an 8th place finish, he had a 6th, he had a 5th. Whereas Double never dropped out of the top 4, ended with something like 40 plus points. So that's why I'm trusting him to be more consistent, not only as a top 4 player, but as a top 1 player.
We'll start to wrap things up then. Witter, how are you feeling about your Dane? How are you feeling about Lev on the world stage? I'm just going to leave that hanging for you to knock it out of the park. It's kind of a T-ball setup. Is he going to win? Is he going to win internationals?
I mean, he's going to do well for sure, right? And again, Denmark, generally speaking, good esports nation. In other Riot titles, in League of Legends, again, right, we have, I'm just going to say Caps, Bjergsen, Wonder, like all these world-class League of Legends players, and now we are ready to knock it out of the park as well in TFT. Lefty Trotsky is about to put Denmark on the map in TFT.
All right, I like it. That will conclude our broadcast for today. You can find more TFT information on Twitter. Be sure to follow @TFT. You can also find all the patches, updates, and news about esports under the community heading at leagueoflegends.com. Thank you so much for watching the EU qualifiers. Thank you to KitKat, Riot, the production team here, Matt, Witter, and our wonderful producer, Stefan. The broadcast wouldn't have been possible without all of you. Thank you for watching. Have a great rest of your day. There's more TFT on the horizon, and I can't wait to see you there.